This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Anyway. Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutastrophe and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, September the 8th, in 2002, the 32nd NFL franchise started their long and industrious career. And all that. It was hard pressed. Houston had a football team that was decent once upon a time. In the 1970s, they had back-to-back AFC title game spots. They lost one game 34-5 because of bad weather. And then when the weather was good, Houston had a chance to beat Pittsburgh. Lost by 7, but thanks to the non-call on Mike Renfro's apparent touchdown catch, the Oilers were robbed of a Super Bowl date with the Dallas Cowboys, which would have been great, the Battle of Texas. So anyway, the Houston Oilers kind of slipped off a little bit. They got Warren Moon, who was their leader. Unfortunately, Houston was known for their chokery, especially after the fact. In 1992, in the playoffs, they actually choked to John Elway and the Broncos in Denver, as Elway led what was called the Drive 2 with a 98-yard drive to sink the Houston Oilers. Houston would regroup, have a better defense, and all that. In their final game at home against Buffalo, they knocked Jim Kelly out of the game. Jim Kelly could not start in the rematch at Rich Stadium, as it was called at the time. In the wildcard game, Buffalo was upset with themselves. They would have to play Houston in the wildcard game. Houston took a 35-3 lead and thought they were going to head to the second round, probably to Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, they choked. The defense just played a little tough, and the offense was just like mailing it in and all that. Buffalo managed to force that game into overtime. Steve Christie kicked the field goal after the Bills intercepted Moon. Houston was in trouble. The 93 season was not any good either. Yeah, they did win 11 straight games at the end of the year to get a divisional round home game at the Astrodome against the Kansas City Chiefs and won Joe Montana. Kansas City had a chance to unseat Houston with the longest winning streak. Houston had a lot of problems. One member of the team was scorned for not coming to Houston to play football while his wife was giving birth, leading Bud Adams to being an anti-feminist. Jeff Alm killed himself after thinking he killed his friend in a car crash. And then there was a lot of fights, especially with Buddy Ryan punching Kevin Kilbride in the snout. Because Buddy Ryan was the defensive coordinator, and was upset that his defense had to bail out Houston's anemic offense of Kevin Kilbride. So anyway, Houston then shockingly lost to the Chiefs. And I believe it was J.J. Burden who actually threw a ball right into a poster of Buddy Ryan. Kansas City shocked Houston with a good fourth quarter move. The Oilers just went downhill from there. They had a few 2-14 seasons. They got Steve McNair, a good draft pick, but they couldn't go much anywhere. And the fans were not really having it. They didn't like a losing team. All that would choke. So basically, Houston would move to Tennessee to become the Tennessee Titans. They got to the Super Bowl in 2000, but lost to the St. Louis Rams. That's the only time the Titans have been to the Super Bowl since 2000. Well, since all that Oilers/Titans. So Houston was without NFL football for a while. But thankfully, though, they got a lifeline. After all, it was huge. They ended up playing, giving Houston an expansion franchise in 2002. They called themselves the Houston Texans. That was the name of the Dallas team when they played in the AFL before they moved to Kansas City to become the Chiefs. But yeah, they were Texans through and through. And with this 32nd team, the NFL decided to change from a 6-division format to an 8-division format. Basically, with the fact that it happened. So they would move teams around. And one of the biggest moves was moving Seattle from the AFC to the NFC to make it 2 groups of 16. Houston would be in the AFC, in the same division as the Titans, oddly enough, who left Houston. But of course, the big move was that they actually did the geography correctly, put Atlanta in the south and Arizona in the west. The olden days, Arizona was in the NFC East for some reason, even though it was because St. Louis had a team. but the team moved to Arizona in 1988, and they didn't move them away from the NFC East, which was weird. And Atlanta was in the NFC West for some reason, even though they were close to the Atlantic Ocean. But they fixed everything. So the Houston Texans were ready to rumble and all that. Dom Capers was the new head coach, and he was good. He helped Carolina get close to the Super Bowl in '97. So Houston got some players in the expansion draft. Tony Baselli was the main guy. However, he would suffer an injury and would never play for the Texans. Quarterback Danny Warfel would have been with Houston, but they traded him to Washington. So other marginable names: Aaron Glenn, J.B. Sharper, Jermaine Lewis, Seth Payne, and Johnny Huggins were good. In the NFL draft, they decided to use their first pick to get David Carr from Fresno, which seemed to be a good idea at the time. He was a decent quarterback for Fresno. Jabbar Gaffney was picked in the second round. He was good too. Jonathan Wells, fourth round from Ohio State, he was good too. So the roster was set. They were going with David Carr at quarterback, with Tony Banks being the backup. Their main running back possibly was James Allen or Jonathan Wells. Wide receivers, they went with Gaffney and Jermaine Lewis. Tight ends, Billy Miller. And then they had a good offensive line. Steve McKinney at center. Ryan Shaw, Ryan Young at the tackles. Defensive linemen, Eric Flowers, Seth Payne, Jeff Posey. Good linebackers such as Jamie Sharper and Kaylee Wong. And defensive backs, Aaron Glenn and Chris Carter. They played their first game ever against the Dallas Cowboys on home turf on Sunday Night Football. This day, September 8th, 2002. And they beat the Dallas Cowboys 19-10. Dallas was in a transitional period because Torrey Aikman had retired due to injury. But the Texans, for one night, could prove they were that good. So they took care of Dallas. Houston would actually only win 4 games in their career. They did beat Jacksonville, the Giants, and even beat Pittsburgh, which was shocking. But, it was just too bad. But the Texans won 19-10. David Carr threw the first touchdown pass of Houston's existence to Billy Miller. Dallas actually tied it at 10. But then Houston got a touchdown pass from David Carr to Corey Bradford to make it 17-10. And then Quincy Carter got sacked in the end zone for a safety. Texans won 19-10. So that's good. Emmitt Smith still was around for Dallas. Joey Galloway was around for Dallas, but they couldn't beat the Cowboys, which was shocking. For 69,000 fans and many, many more on ESPN. So that's just the crest of it. The Houston Texans were here to stay. Now, Houston had growing pains and got to a few playoff games, but they seemed to never close the deal. They lost a couple to Cincy. They lost on home turf in the wild card to Oakland and Kansas City. Was it Indy? I don't remember. I know the Raiders came to town and shocked Houston, even though they were going with Connor Cook at quarterback instead of David Carr. No, not David Carr. David Carr. No, not David Carr. Derek Carr, sorry. David's younger brother. But yeah, they got shocked by Kansas City in Houston, getting a couple of big touchdowns and getting Sean McDonough's voice to crack a couple of times, which was funny. And then, of course, let's not forget a few years ago, the wildcard game between Houston and Buffalo. Well, they did win that game. Buffalo almost came back to beat them, but Houston lost the next round. So, Houston actually had a 22-0 lead or something like that against Kansas City. And everyone was shocked. I actually wore a red sweater to my buddy Bill's place. And Bill's like, "You idiot, you jinxed them." And I said, "No, I didn't." And then I told Bill, I said, "It's the second quarter. There's still 2 quarters left, 22-0. Houston can choke this." Lo and behold, Kansas City scores like 50-plus points in a row, and Kansas City easily blows out Houston. So, I didn't panic. I usually panic at things, but anyway, yeah. So Houston's been kind of jinxed, in a sense. The sports city's been a jinx. The Rockets are sucking. and are having internal issues. The Astros, well, the Astros are the Astros. They cheated, but yet they're still got a good team. And there's been no NHL team in Houston, so can't really talk about that. The four sports. But yeah, I can talk about a few sports. So Houston debuted. They're here to stay, I hope. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.